Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good morning. I want to begin my remarks this morning with a story. For more than 20 years, Carlos Rosas, a lifelong resident of the Southwest Side, was known as the most dedicated and hardworking employee at the Calumet Fisheries. When dining somewhere, he'd anonymously pay the tab for elderly patrons eating alone. He was just that kind of guy. The kindest person you'd ever meet, devoted to his family and his friends. And when his sister suffered a devastating injury, of course he stepped in and became her primary caregiver. Again, he was just that kind of guy. But on July 20th, COVID-19 stole Carlos from us, and his family's loss is felt among all of us who call this city, this county, our home. We've lost so many people who made an indelible impact throughout our county, our country, and our world. We cannot even begin to quantify the magnitude of this loss. To Carlos's family, thank you. Thank you for sharing him with us for 41 years. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you. Like so many of you, I started this year with a vision, a 2020 vision. And just like that, how quickly our 2020 vision went awry. I know our collective visions never considered a world where handshakes are forbidden, hugs are off limits, a world where, should we even go outside, you check to make sure you have the necessities: your wallet, your purse, your keys, your coat, and now a new vital accessory, your mask. Our 2020 vision never imagined a world where maintaining a physical distance of 6 feet from our mothers, our daughters, our fathers, our brothers, even our elderly, allow the best chance for their and our own survival. A world where wearing a mask to protect your neighbor should be patriotic, not partisan. A world where the simple and factual statement, Black Lives Matter, remains somehow, for some, impossible to say. For everyone listening this morning, let me remind you and know that this is not normal, this is not over. It's okay to not be okay. And also know this will not last forever. This pandemic has been relentless and unforgiving. Just listen to the numbers. 214,000 and counting have died nationally from COVID-19. Here in Cook County, our outlook has been just as bleak. 157,000 COVID-positive cases. Out of those, more than 5,300 have succumbed to this deadly novel coronavirus. And has been true throughout American history, our Black and brown communities have been hit the hardest. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The most vulnerable among us, the most vulnerable, are often left to bear the brunt of what should be a collective burden. Your zip code should not determine your life expectancy, and your race should not determine your access to opportunity. And it's only through equity-based public policy that we'll reach our goal of a more just and equal world. But as it stands today, where you live and how you identify too often determines your quality of life. And COVID-19 has only exacerbated this fact. Of the 50 largest cities in our country, Chicago has the biggest life expectancy gap. In Pilsen, on the southwest side of Chicago, the average life expectancy is 68 years. In Wilmette, in the northern suburbs, it's 82. In West Garfield Park, on the west side, it's 65. In Schaumburg, in the northwest suburbs, it's 85. In Englewood, on the south side of Chicago, it's 60 years. And in Streeterville, downtown, it's 90. That's a range of 30 years. This is unacceptable. The world is now learning what happens when inequity in our society is allowed to fester. And in parallel with a pandemic, we're collectively learning the answer to Langston Hughes' poignant question: what happens to a dream deferred? The dreams of someone like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and also the dreams of Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, our own Laquan McDonald, and Breonna Taylor. I'll repeat that name again. Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor. And now we all know what happens to our world when far too many dreams are so wrongly deferred. It explodes. With an aching and angered heart, I peacefully marched side by side with so many of you this summer, demanding justice. Justice for these black lives snuffed out with impunity. And like so many of you, I too am still awaiting justice. Justice in so many of these cases has yet to be served. The unrest, the uprisings this summer forced all of us to pause and reflect. I thought about race in America, as well as the racism I personally experienced in my life. The searing moments that have shaped me to this day. I spoke candidly about my own upbringing and one of the many times I was called nigger. That vile, racist, hate-filled word that was hurled my way during my childhood far too often. And of course, I'm not alone. Too many people of color have similar stories of hate, but also of resilience. And again, the too many dreams deferred this summer would be more than enough to bear for 1 year. But there was more, of course. The economy. It tanked. Travel stopped. Hotels became ghost towns. Sports teams played to empty seats. The sounds of the symphony were silenced. Unemployment in Cook County rose to 17.4% by June 30th. That's a far cry from the 4.2% unemployment rate in Cook County just 1 year ago. Hard to believe that it was just 1 year ago. It feels like we've lived a decade since then. Unsurprisingly, Cook County's budget outlook has been equally dreary. Due to the economic consequences brought on by the pandemic and unrest, we've experienced hundreds of millions in revenue losses, and we're faced with an economic calamity we could never have foreseen in that original 2020 vision. When I took office in 2010, an actual decade ago, a near $500 million deficit stared at us. Since then, we've made tough decisions, cut costs, spent wisely, and worked within our means. We hoped a rainy day would never come, but if it did, we hoped the work we put in, the sacrifices we made, the cuts we took, the billions of dollars in budget gaps closed, would place us in a better position to weather the crises we hoped would never come. Last year, we announced a historically low projected preliminary gap of $18.7 million. This was the lowest preliminary gap of my administration, and an almost 96% decrease from the $487 million gap we encountered my first year in office. Fast forward now to June of this year, in the middle of the pandemic. We were more than $200 million in the red, and that number was growing by $50 million each month. Before long, we faced a projected deficit of $320 million. This was worse than any rainy day we had feared. But despite the precipitous drop in revenue, through a decade of tough decisions and strategic management, I can stand here today and say the budget that I present weathers the 2020 storm. So today I'm proud to announce this $6.9 billion budget for fiscal year 2021 is balanced with no tax increases. This proposed budget is balanced with no cuts to critical services or widespread layoffs. And this 2021 budget is balanced while increasing our investments in equity. Let me repeat that. In the midst of a historic pandemic, this proposed budget will have no tax increase, no cuts to critical services, and will be balanced while increasing our investments in equity. And as you will see, never in Cook County's history has a budget placed this much of its own corporate dollars into equity-focused investments. We refuse to balance this budget on the backs of the residents and the businesses who need resources the most, especially during a pandemic. We also made sure to balance this budget while continuing to increase our contributions to our pension fund. 5 years ago, we recognized a problem with the funding mechanism, and we took definitive steps to address this problem in a responsible manner. I'm very proud that to date, Cook County has provided supplemental pension payments of almost $1.7 billion above the required contribution, significantly reducing the unfunded pension liability. We will not kick the can down the road, even in a pandemic. Still, I will not mince words here. This pandemic has dealt Cook County and its residents a catastrophic blow. And let me be abundantly clear. While we're in this spot because of good, wise, and tough decisions made over the last decade, Cook County cannot absorb another financial calamity in 2021. No matter how we balance our books and continue to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we cannot take another historic hit as we did this year. Not without impacting critical services to our residents. No one can. If we do, the outlook and the outcome will not be the same. While we know that next year's budget will pose a tremendous challenge, today we'll focus on our 2021 budget. Before I announce some of the highlights of this budget, I must say thank you. Thank you first and foremost to our residents for wearing masks, physically distancing, and understanding that these sacrifices save lives. Thank you to each of our separately elected officials who all collaborated with us to ensure that they tightened their belts without making deep cuts to their operations and the services that they provide. This was not easy for them either. Without their help and shared sacrifice, today would not be possible. Thank you to our staff for continuing to provide services during these immensely difficult times. Let me say my thanks personally to our sheriff's deputies for their hard work and sacrifice, especially during this pandemic. Thank you to our frontline workers and heroes at Cook County Health for rising to this extraordinary challenge by providing health care to those most in need. Heroes like Victoria Furlow. Victoria has served as a paramedic at Cook County Jail for more than 20 years. Her warm demeanor and her belief in humanity allows her to establish instant trust with her patients. She's often the first CIRMAC employee a detainee will encounter following their arrival at the jail. She takes their vitals, documents their medical history, and talks them through the intake process. Since April, she has also been performing COVID tests. Victoria was asked by a reporter earlier this year why she does what she does. She responded, "Because it's my job, and I love my job." For decades, Cook County Health has been filled with heroes like Victoria. They go about their jobs quietly caring for the most vulnerable. COVID reminded us that their commitment is something that should be celebrated. And let me remind everyone that despite operating only two of the 68 hospitals in Cook County, Provident and Stroger, Cook County Health provides over 50% of all the charity care across the county. Cook County Health serves as a safety net for many of our residents. This has been especially true for our undocumented neighbors throughout the county. We promise to always stand with you in your times of greatest need. 62-year-old Englewood resident Milton Walker is one of many residents who are grateful to the staff and support of Cook County Health. Like tens of millions of people across the nation, Milton recently lost his job as a bus operator. He became one of the millions of uninsured people in our country. That number will undoubtedly rise, by the way, should the Affordable Care Act be repealed. Milton almost lost his toe due to his lack of medical care and coverage. That's where Cook County Health stepped in. Milton became a patient at Provident Hospital. He received his treatment, and as he puts it, received nothing but great service. Milton wrote to us to say, "I feel that Provident Hospital is such an asset to the community, and the services there should be sustained at all cost. Please don't cut any services at Provident Hospital, as it's a staple and an asset to the African American community." Let me tell you this, Milton, you don't have to worry. Cook County is fully committed to you, the surrounding community, and ensuring everyone who needs it receives the highest quality care at Provident. You know, there's been a lot of disinformation spread about this historic hospital, particularly on social media. And today, I want to set the record straight. We're strengthening Provident Hospital. It's here to stay, period. I'll say it again. We're strengthening Provident Hospital, and it's here to stay. How about we share that on social media? #ProvidentStrong. In fact, over the next few months, we will be reimagining Provident with a new lifestyle center that will provide programmatic and educational services to help patients manage chronic diseases. Many of these diseases disproportionately impact the Black community. We will open a brand new 12-chair dialysis center. We will expand existing diagnostic services, which will include CT, MRIs, and upgraded radiology rooms. And we're creating a more robust outpatient surgery operation. Yes, we will be consolidating 2 clinics, the Near South and Woodlawn clinics into Provident. We are not doing this to cut costs. We are doing this to improve services to the community. Every single patient at those clinics will be able to keep their same doctor, access the same services they now receive, just at a new location that many of them already travel to, Provident Hospital. Additionally, last year, we announced plans for more than $200 million investment in Provident Hospital redevelopment. These plans are moving forward. Again, hashtag Provident Strong. Why do we remain committed to these plans? Why do we remain committed to Black and brown communities? Because this is what prioritizing equity looks like. When it comes to health care, transportation, economic opportunity, public safety, county services that improve our residents' quality of life, we are resolute in our commitment to equity, especially during a pandemic. During these challenging times, transportation has been more relevant than ever. Last year, during the county's first Racial Equity Week, I announced a fair transit pilot program. We wanted to ensure that residents on the south side of Chicago and our south suburbs had better access to transit. We pledged to reduce fares on the Metro Electric and Rock Island lines, enhance service on Pace's Halstead corridor, and committed to the initial investment to make this 3-year pilot happen. I want to assure you that we have not let the pandemic thwart our efforts. I'm proud to say this budget stays committed to the pilot and aims to launch in January 2021. Why? Because this is what prioritizing equity looks like, especially in a pandemic. I'm proud that this pilot is moving forward, and I'm grateful for the leadership of John Yonan of our Department of Transportation and Highways. He has been instrumental in fair transit while also shepherding a number of important road projects in our suburbs. As we take a holistic and equitable look at our roads, we are doing the same when it comes to criminal justice reform. And what's more, we're doubling down. In fiscal year 2021, the county plans to establish an equity fund and will invest an additional $20 million in community-based services. These services are directed toward residents involved or at risk of becoming involved with the criminal justice system. This increase over the next 2 years will total nearly $32.5 million, funding directly to the community through the Justice Advisory Council, or our JAC. A recent evaluation by DePaul University found that our Justice Advisory Council programs and practices are evidence-informed and have proven to be effective in delivering successful outcomes. We saw in 2020 how violent crime has risen during the pandemic to levels that were even higher than our worst year experienced in 2016. We also know that we cannot police our way out of this crisis. We cannot police our way out of gun violence. We've learned that we must use a public health approach to address the root causes of violence. That means investing in the communities that people live in and investing in people. That's why we're providing these additional funds for public safety programs in impacted communities. This money will provide grants to community-based organizations which work directly with individuals who've been entangled in our criminal justice system. We're using evidence-based programs to prevent and reduce violence before it starts. Connect those in need to critical mental health and substance abuse services rather than detention and incarceration. Reduce recidivism. Bring restorative justice to communities, especially to young adults, and so much more. We're also investing more resources into our Public Defender's Immigration Unit in 2021. It will be one of the largest in the country when it launches. These times demand more from us than just being a welcoming county. The PD Immigration Unit builds upon Cook County's commitment to being a fair and equal community for all residents, regardless of their immigration status. With an additional $350,000 for staff, the Public Defender's Office can continue to fight the good fight, protecting our immigrant communities. These dollars will ensure that clients are fully informed of the potential immigration consequences of criminal cases. This will allow more of our immigrant neighbors to make strategic decisions that will have an impact on their futures in our country. I want to take a moment and thank Public Defender Amy Campanelli and her team for working diligently to make this unit a reality. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank the Defenders for All Coalition and all of its members for their tireless advocacy, Commissioners Anaya and Johnson for their leadership and collaboration during the initial planning process. I would also like to thank the J.B. and M.K. Pritzker Foundation for their pledge of support. Improving the lives of those involved in our criminal justice system is just one piece of the Equity Fund. We will also be investing in economic opportunity and essential services to our residents. Over the next 2 years, we will invest $20 million in economic development. We will continue our expanded grant and assistance programs launched by the Bureau of Economic Development to help working families and small businesses survive the pandemic. We will also launch a mortgage foreclosure mediation program and an early resolution program to help residents across Cook County at risk of losing their homes after the mortgage and eviction moratoriums are lifted at the end of this year. With some exemplary direction from Bureau Chief Xochitl Flores, the Bureau of Economic Development moved quickly to provide emergency support to working families, small businesses, gig workers, and nonprofits struggling to make ends meet. With our federal funding, we launched a comprehensive suite of programs through the Community Recovery Initiative. I'm grateful for all the work of the Department of Economic Development staff. I appreciate what they've done to put these programs in place. In addition to providing assistance directly to residents and businesses in suburban Cook, we also prioritized helping municipalities throughout the county. In late April, Cook County received $429 million from the U.S. Treasury from the CARES Act, and we've been compassionate stewards of these funds as we begin to recover. We created a nationally recognized model for allocating these funds based on socioeconomic determinants and public health needs. And we designed this approach to ensure the dollars are going to communities most impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. From Cicero to Schaumburg, from Chicago Heights to Chicago Ridge, we're distributing millions of dollars to municipalities right now. We worked on creating this formula with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. I'm grateful to them for their support, and I'm proud of the results. But we're definitely not out of the woods yet. Let me make it abundantly clear. The inequities that I've been talking about today existed long before 2020. They've only been magnified. The gaps widened, the health disparities worsened during the pandemic. This is the cruel reality of rampant inequality. It's exasperating, it's infuriating, but it shouldn't come as a surprise. Given our history, governments have essential duties to use our resources and powers to address these disparities and provide all residents with equitable services regardless of race, ethnicity, or zip code. If and when the next crisis hits, we can't repeat the same mistakes. Whether it be the Chicago heat wave of 1995, Hurricane Katrina, or a global pandemic, Cook County will not allow our vulnerable communities to be hit the hardest by every single catastrophe. So I want you, the residents of Cook County, to be sure that you continue to be resilient. I want to thank you for your mutual aid and community organizing. It's been inspiring to watch neighbors come together to help those in need. I want to thank Bill Barnes and our team at Emergency Management and Regional Security, who have distributed more than 1.5 million pieces of personal protective equipment, and counting, to Cook County communities. I want to thank Cook County Health's Andrea Gibson, Interim Chief Business Officer, and Interim Chief Executive Officer Aaron Galiner for their tireless efforts during this budget season. I want to give special thanks to my Chief of Staff, Lynetta Haynes-Turner, and our 6 bureau chiefs and their teams who've helped guide us through this pandemic. CFO Amar Ritsky has done an incredible job and helped bring us to where we are today. And to Budget Director Annette Guzman, who's going through her first budget season at the county, thank you for a remarkable job done under immense pressure. I also want to thank my Director of Communications, Nick Shields, and our communications team, Alex Ensign, Hannah Fearley, Nick Mathudas, Ted Nelson, and Jenny Sanchez, who've been working nonstop since the pandemic began to ensure our residents have the information they need to survive during these difficult times. Last but not least, I want to thank our commissioners for their help and support and willingness over the last decade to make the tough choices which enabled us to address the challenges of the moment. We can't say with certainty what happens next. I know this budget works to address the fallout of this pandemic. It's a moral document of which we can be proud. This is a budget that reflects our values. It reflects our commitment to advancing equity in Cook County. Together, we will stand up to any future challenges as one Cook County. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Michael Albert, who is our sign language interpreter.